What is your favorite thing to bake? For me, it's brownies, but we can't really decorate those, so let's do something a bit more festive and let's bake some digital gingerbread. Hello, my name is Jade and I like to paint with pixels. So I thought it would be fun to use the same method as we would to actually bake them, so I have a little recipe for us. Step 1 is going to be to mix the dough or choose our color palette. Step 2 is to shape the dough. Step 3 is to bake it or add a bit more depth and detail. And then step 4 is to decorate it. So, let's jump into it. Step 1, mix the dough. For this step, I thought it would be good to get all the ingredients together. So, first thing we need is a color palette for both the biscuit and for the icing. And I'll add the hex codes here if you would like to follow along with this. I'm just going to keep it simple and just use white icing for the decorations, but you could absolutely use any color that you would like for it. You just need to make sure that you have one shade for the base and another slightly darker shade to give the icing a bit more of a 3D look later on. Step 2, shape the dough. Once we have mixed our dough, we'll need to roll it out and create some base shapes for our gingerbread. So from our color palette, I'm going to be using the darkest shade to lay out these base shapes. For my gingerbread, I'm going to go for a few different shapes. I want to go for some of the classics like the gingerbread person and some snowflakes and trees, but I also want to try out some other shapes of some of my characters that I like to draw. So for this, I'm gonna cut out a shape for Fern and for Lulu. If you wanted more than one of the same shape, you can just use a cookie cutter to make another one of the shapes. Or in our case, copy and paste the base shape. And I'm gonna do that for the gingerbread people and the snowflake shapes, so I can decorate them in a few different ways. Step 3 is to bake the dough. Now we're going to bake them in the oven at 190 degrees C for 10 to 12 minutes, or in our case, we're going to use a few more colors from the color palette to give the biscuits a bit more texture and depth. With each of these colors, I'm layering the lighter shade on top of the previous one, but leaving a few spaces around the edges to let some of the color from underneath peek through. I'm also adding a few extra darker spots in the middle of the gingerbread, to mimic some of the air bubbles. But when you're drawing, don't stress too much on the placement of these smaller details. I found that the more loose you are with where you place like the little cracks and the little air bubbles, the better it looks, because it just looks a bit more organic and sort of how it would cook in an oven. I could keep doing the rest of these, but I think the video would be an hour long, and I've always wanted to do this, so here's some I made earlier. That felt so stupid. Oh. Alright, enough with the shenanigans. It's time for the final step. Step 4, decorate. This is where I feel like they really start to look like gingerbread, and for this I'm going to go in with the lightest of the two icing shades and outline the design that I have for each of these. Again, don't have to be perfect with this, as I feel like the small wiggles and bumps that you have in the outline can make the gingerbread look a lot more handmade, and I think it looks quite cute. Then, once I have the main outline down, I start to add a bit more detail with the darker shade of the icing. I try to stick with adding this to one side of the icing, usually the bottom, to try and mimic the icing having a bit of height to it and make it look a bit more 3D. The reason I wanted to have 3 gingerbread people is so I could make a little reference to one of my favorite drawings that I did this year, which was a Polaroid of a few of my characters that I draw wearing a different part of a woolly set? I don't know what to call it, but Lily got the hat, Lulu got the scarf, and Fern got the gloves, and so I thought it would be a cute reference here if each of the people had a different part of the woolly set. It's funny because in real life baking, I really enjoy making the baked goods, but I'm not as keen on the decorating part. Though I guess I haven't had too much experience with decorating many of the things that I make. I've started to learn how to bake my own bread, which has been really rewarding, but you can't really decorate a regular loaf of bread. I know you can cut some designs into bread like sourdough before you bake it, but we're definitely not at the stage to try and make that. So we're just going with the little baby steps for now. My go-to thing that I like to bake are brownies, and the recipe that I use is from a video by Joshua Weissman, and I'll leave a link to it in the description because they're hella good and I think everyone should try them. But you don't really need to decorate brownies, so again, haven't had a lot of time to practice decorating stuff that I make, but maybe it's something I'll try next year. What are your go-to things to bake? Let me know in the comments. With that, I think our gingerbread are done. These are pretty fun to do and super customizable in a bunch of different ways. What I think could be fun to try next time is making these like properly 3D by trying out some voxel art, but maybe next year. Unfortunately, you can't eat these, but I hope you enjoyed making them nonetheless, and I hope you have a lovely and cozy holiday season with the people that you care about most. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care out there. Goodbye!